As kids head back to school, they are carrying backpacks that are filled with technology, smartphones, laptops, tablets, a whole lot more. They're more connected to technology than ever before. But with that connection comes risks, financial scams, things that target teenagers, a whole lot more. This is, of course, of concern to parents. So what can parents do? 207's tech guy Rich Brooks from Flight New Media has been looking into possible solutions and as the risks as well. So let's start at the beginning. What is sort of top of mind that parents ought to be thinking about with this, Rich?
Rob, I think it really depends on how old your kids are. So if your kids are in elementary school, your big concerns are going to be things like oversharing or maybe weak passwords. As they move into middle school, we have to throw in some cyberbullying and falling for online scams. It's actually the high school students I'm most concerned about because there are so many cases of what's called financial sextortion, which is basically when criminals pretend to be teenagers to get your kids to show them revealing pictures or compromising photos, and then they demand cash, otherwise they'll release them. It sounds pretty scary, but in this country, over 26,000 cases were reported just last year, according to the National Center for Missing Children. So it is a real threat.
Yeah, that is so alarming. Parents' worst nightmare. So let's get to those practical tips. What should parents do as they get started to thinking about what they can do to protect their kids online?
Yeah, I think the best advice is really just have open conversations with your kids where they feel comfortable coming to you as well. But there are going to be some families or some kids who need a little bit more aggressive intervention. And if you feel that way, there are tools right within the devices you're sending them to school with that can be helpful. There are family tools for on the iPhone and iPad. It's the screen settings in your settings. And on the Android, families can download the Google Family Link that'll give them more control. You can also go to some of the social platforms themselves. Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, all have family tools that allow parents to log in to see how much time your kids are spending on these devices, but also who they're DMing, which can also be problematic.
How about something very basic, passwords and security?
Yes, because kids are no better at coming up with good passwords, I think, than adults. It's important to teach them to think long pass phrases rather than short pass words. So something like, pizza is my favorite food, 2025 exclamation point is actually an excellent password. It is easy to remember and it is hard to crack. If you want to go a little bit further, you can set up some password management with your kid or even show them how to set up two-factor authentication.
How can parents get started teaching kids how to recognize online scams, threats, risks?
Yeah, these are the same kind of things that we've always been talking about. So if you get a message, or if your kid gets a message that says, act now, or click on this link before it expires, that's something you need to teach them. Urgency is like the tool of criminals, so make sure that you're not clicking on any links. In fact, my daughter in college still sends me screen captures of messages she gets and says, is this legitimate? And I'm fine with that. Another problem would be is that kids will often overshare, so teaching them not to overshare. If somebody tries to slide into your DMs who you don't know in real life, that's also problematic, and telling kids not to do those kind of things. And these days, with more voice cloning and deep fakes, we need to teach kids that even when they see messages that might sound or look like us, they may not be real. And to look for things like strange lighting or lips not moving in sync with the audio. Those can be telltale signs that it's a scam.
We know the bad operators are out there. They are active. So if something bad happens, what can parents do?
All right, so the first thing is you never pay a scammer. In fact, don't even engage with them at that point. Instead, take screen captures of everything, document everything. And there's a cyber tip line set up by the National Center for Missing Children that you can report this to, or if you want to, you can also report it to local police. If your kid is already in danger and needs immediate support, you can text or dial 988 to get that immediate support, and if they're in real danger, 911.
All of what we've talked about can be a little overwhelming. Final tips for parents as they try to come to grips with all this?
Yeah, I think the most important lesson to learn is really to keep those open lines of communication, like I was saying, and make sure that your kid feels comfortable coming to you if there is a problem. I know that a lot of parents feel overwhelmed because these are not the problems they may have had to experience when they were kids, and they may feel their kids are even more technically savvy than they are. but technologically savvy is not necessarily the same thing as having common sense that comes from years of real world experience. So having those open conversations is important. And if you're not sure where to start, how to even begin that conversation, there are plenty of resources online, including the Department of Homeland Security and the National Center for Missing Children. All have those conversation starters on their websites.
All right. Excellent, excellent advice. Rich Brooks, we appreciate it as always. Rich Brooks from Flight New Media. Stay with us. We're going to be back with more of 207 right after this.